Hi there, Rockstar. It's Christina here. I know, right? It's been a while. It's been 2 years exactly since you've heard from me. Well, since you've heard a new podcast update from me. If this is the first time you've listened to this podcast or like the second episode or something you've clicked on, just letting you know, this is not a regular episode. So don't listen to this and go, this is a weird podcast. I have over 280 other episodes in the back catalogue. So if you are interested in learning about communication skills, public speaking, building confidence in the workplace, please go back and listen to some other episodes, but not this one. This episode is for you if you were a regular listener of Stand Out, Get Noticed and you were sad that the podcast was on pause and you're aching for it to start up again. Here's an update for you, a very unscripted, candid update. So as you might know, if you were a regular listener, I actually published my last episode on October 7th, 2020. And I'm recording this on October 6th. Oh, I don't even know what the date is, just goes to show. Oh yeah, 6th of October, so just over 2 years ago. And I posted a maternity leave update on the 7th of October. So, as you know, I had a baby. Her name is Breya, and she is almost 2 years old now. I had her on Halloween, actually, the 31st of October, 2020. And so firstly, she's been a joy. It's been amazing. I've been loving motherhood. It's been really good. What I want to give you an update on today is just where I've been at with my headspace around the podcast, around the C method, where I've been, why I haven't been back earlier. And I know you've all been so patient in hanging out and waiting for me. I want to thank you for that. So you might recall when I posted my message to say, okay, I'm going on maternity leave, I was like, I'm going to be back in 3 months. That was my plan at the time. I thought I'm going to take 3 months off the podcast, then I'm going to come back and it's all going to be fine. I tell you what, it turns out having a baby takes up a lot of time. A lot of time. And the time that you don't spend with the baby, you want to spend sleeping. So what I found was those 3 months went by so quickly, so quickly. And I just thought there's no way do not have the mental capacity right now to get back into the podcast. So I left it. And I left it and I left it and I left it. And before I know it, it is now 2 years gone. And I'm still at the point where I haven't gotten it started yet. Anyway, I want to share with you some of the things that have gone on for me in my mind. Now, I remember at the time I was quite happy to take a pause from the podcast because I'd been running this podcast since 2015 and I'd been doing it every single week for 5.5 years. That's a lot. That's a lot of work. There's a lot of podcasts. And it took up a lot of my time every single week. And to be honest, as much as I enjoyed doing it, it felt like it became this box ticking exercise. And I felt like I was chasing my tail a bit. Every week, I felt like as soon as I did a podcast, all of a sudden it was the following week and I needed to do another one. And don't get me wrong, I got really good at being really efficient with my process and getting them out there. And I'm still very proud of all of the episodes that I put out. But I think that break came at a really good time for me because it's enabled me to just get some space from the podcast. I spent a lot of time on my other business, Podcast Services Australia, where we help companies and organizations set up their own podcasts. So I've been very involved in the podcasting space and just absorbing and learning a lot about what I really enjoy about a podcast or what's really effective and just looking at the stats and everything like that. So it's been really good to get that space. But I got to say, I definitely dealt with a fair bit of guilt once that 3 months had passed and I hadn't started my podcast again. When I said I was going to, I started to feel guilt around, but I said I would do it and I feel like I should. And this is where I had to have some really good conversations with myself and really really explore what I was feeling, because I didn't want to start the podcast again just because I felt I should. I really don't believe in doing something just because we should. I don't like that word. It just puts a lot of pressure on, and it doesn't feel good. And I thought, I don't want to do all this work and start the podcast because, like, for the wrong reasons. And doing it out of guilt, doing it because I feel I should, doing it because, it's just something that I've always done, so just may as well keep doing it. That I didn't want to start it again for those reasons. And so I reassured myself by saying, you know what, Christina? Just trust that you'll know intuitively when you want to start the podcast for all the right reasons. And another reason why that actually put me off starting the podcast was that the podcast acts as, obviously it's my way of getting out my content and my insights, to you all, to my awesome listeners, my awesome followers. It's a great way for me to share the knowledge of other people, of my guests, with you as well. And one of the side effects of that is it builds my profile. And what happens is it made my website perform really strongly. So thecmethod.com, my website where all the podcasts live, it ranked. Doing a podcast every week has helped that website rank so strongly over the last 5 years. It's just been amazing. And it brings in a solid amount of inquiries for my coaching services, for my training services, for my MC services. So the podcast is a really effective lead generation tool. And I remember thinking at the time when when Brea was, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, even a year old, I was like, hang on, if I start the podcast again and it starts to generate more leads, I don't actually have capacity to take on more work. Because Aaron, my husband, and I, we were looking after Brea full time. We only started putting her into daycare earlier this year in March. So like the first 18 months of her life, we were looking after her full time together. Which meant that we were juggling back and forth. If I had client meetings, Aaron would look after her, and vice versa. We would get my parents to come and babysit occasionally, but really, I was getting not much done, not much done. And I actually really struggled with it after a while, because I was like, I'm not getting anything done here. I'm not being productive. How can I possibly manage all this? I just didn't have that capacity, because Podcast Services Australia, our other business, was still moving full speed ahead. And even though we have a team around that, anything that came up, anything that needed my attention was, I gave it first. It was always urgent. And of course I had coaching clients as well, but I just had no capacity to take on a lot of new clients. And so for me, I was like, well, why would I start the podcast again and do all this extra work that's going to generate more work that I actually don't have time to have? So that was something else that I was considering. So going back to the reasons for starting the podcast, I know this isn't not a super structured episode, but I did warn you at the start. Something that I've realised as well is that even though it's really good to have a break from the podcast, creating content is really like building a muscle. And I feel like it's one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it. Because I found the longer I left the podcast and not starting it, I started to go, all right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to plan an episode or plan my next 10 episodes. And I couldn't do it. I really struggled. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? I don't know. And I really struggled for those creative juices to put something together. Whereas when I was doing it every single week, I found it quite easy to put something together because I was in that routine. And so now in my mind, I'm like, no, I want to start it. I want to get back into the habit, but I know it's going to be hard getting started. And this is another reason why I'm just doing this hello episode, update episode, because to me, this is an easy way to jump back in, not too much pressure, just give you an update, but at least it's starting with something. It's one piece of action that I can take. So, in summary, yes, I am starting the podcast again. Now that I'm sharing this with you now, I feel like it's giving me that accountability because I've told you it's happening. Kind of like I've been telling people who I speak to, like our team and people that I meet at events, and I'm like, I'm going to start the podcast again. And they're like, oh yeah, let us know. So I feel like I'm slowly putting it out there, which means that eventually it will happen. So I'm glad that I'm taking this step. So I will be starting it again. I would love to have a new episode out before the end of October so that I've just said it. I said it. It's a deadline. You can hold me accountable to that. You can write to me on LinkedIn and say, Christina, where's your podcast? You said you were going to release it end of October. Where is it? Totally cool if you do that. If you do that, totally fine. So I'm excited, and I'm glad that I'm at the point now where I'll be creating the podcast from a place of joy and fun and creativity, as opposed to from a place of fear and guilt. Now, in terms of an update on the rest of my business, so many of you might know that I used to do a lot of group coaching programs. That was a 10-week program. I did a lot of one-on-one coaching as well. Over the break that I've had a good amount of time to reflect and think about where do I want to be spending my time. Because even though Breya is in daycare 2 days a week now, so that gives me a good 2 days each week to get stuff done. But then, of course, I'm running Podcast Services Australia as well. So I've had to get very intentional with my time of where I spend it. I just don't have the luxury of a 5-day work week. I'm probably working, I don't know, like the equivalent of 3 full days a week, maybe 3.5 total. But then those days that Breya isn't at daycare, it's all quite disjointed or like disrupted, I should say. Because I'm like feeding her, and then I'll go check an email, and then she'll be like, Mummy, hug, and then I'll go pick her up and then hand her to Aaron, and then I'll go do something, So it's really like, it's definitely not the ideal sort of deep work situation that you would want. But that's life, and I'm accepting that that's what it's like at the moment. So in terms of the work that I've decided I'm really going to focus on is group training, because that's what I absolutely love, working in groups. So this looks like a 1 day or a half day training program for a company where I might work with a team of, let's say, 6 to 10 or even 20 people, teaching them skills around public speaking, building confidence. I've done quite a few of those sessions this year, which has been really cool. Haven't really put it out there, but here I am now, putting it out there. Want to do more day group training, especially in person. I'm so sick of Zoom, which I'm sure many of you are. So if you are in Melbourne and maybe you manage a team or you are part of a team and you think your team would really benefit for some really fun training around building confidence in the workplace, bettering your communication skills, then reach out. I'd be more than happy to have a chat. Email me, cc@thecmethod.com, or just reach out on LinkedIn. I am doing some one-on-one coaching, not a lot. It's definitely not my focus at the moment. I'd much rather focus on the group training, but I am taking on a few select one-on-one clients at the moment if personalised attention is what you're looking for. And something else that's really exciting that I've been doing quite a bit of is emceeing. Now, emceeing is where I might host a webinar or host a conference, introducing the speakers, making sure everyone's clapping and feeling excited and keeping the event moving. It's just one of those things where I'm like, this is so fun. It's just like I see my role as making sure that everyone stays awake and has fun and is engaged and that the speakers feel like rock stars. That's really my job, and it's just so much fun for me, and I love being able to bring my energy to the stage. So I'm actually emceeing the No BS conference in a few weeks from now. It's a tech conference held at the Forum in Melbourne. That's a 2-day conference. That's going to be super fun. I've been doing some awards galas as well, and I think I've got another one in Tasmania at the end of the year, a full-day conference. So if you need an MC for your event, whether it's a corporate event, an awards ceremony, a conference, whatever that is, whether it's online or in person, then reach out, because it's something that I really love to do, and I always make sure that the audience and the client get whatever they need from it. So that's where I'm at with everything. Really appreciate you taking the time to hear my update. If you have a specific topic or something you'd like me to address on the podcast, then do reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll be sharing topics that I'm really excited about at the moment. You can email me, cc@thecmethod.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I am Christina Canters. And I'm excited to have you join me for the next episode. Yay! Stand Out, Get Noticed version 2. Can we call it that? Version 2.0? Anyway, thanks again for joining me. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye.